Welcome back to the Company of the Cat. Hi! In the spirit of the elections in Greece, I became pretty democratic myself and uploaded a poll last week, and you voted for House Durrandon and Storm's End. I said some things I believe about them in my pre-Hammer geography video, so I will start from there. Durran won the love of Elenei, the daughter of the sea god and the goddess of the wind. Her divine parents forbade their love, but Durran and Elenei wed despite them. The god's wrath was terrible to behold, destroying Durran's keep on his wedding and killing all his family and guests. But Durran survived under Elenei's protection. Enraged, Durran declared war on the gods, who replied by hammering his kingdom with massive storms. Each time Durran built a castle to face the sea, the gods destroyed it. Durran kept building larger and more powerful fortifications, until finally the seventh castle, Storm's End, stayed in place and resisted the storms of Shipbreaker Bay. Some believe this is because the children of the forest helped in its construction, others believe a young boy who grew up to be Bran the Builder advised Durran, but no one is sure. I believe that the whole story of Durran's destroyed castles came to be because the real event occurred during the Hammer of the Waters. These castles were destroyed by the chaos the Hammer caused. The old songs say that the Greenseers used dark magics to make the seas rise and sweep away the land, shattering the arm, but it was too late to close the door. But whether the breaking took place in a single night or over the course of centuries, there can be no doubt that it occurred. The stepstones and the broken arm of Dorne give mute but eloquent testimony to its effect. There is also much to suggest that the Sea of Dorne was once an inland freshwater sea, fed by mountain streams and much smaller than it is today, until the narrow sea burst its bounds and drowned the salt marshes that lay between. We can see that the stepstones were a unified area and the Sea of Dorne was a smaller inland sea, kinda like what you're seeing on the screen, I think. Meanwhile, the Stormlands and Dorne were connected by a flat, easily passable area with access to fresh water, making the entrance to mainland Westeros way easier. According to the Maesters, the first men came with horses and on foot, which is obviously not that easy to do through Dorne, since we know it was called empty lands by the children of the forest and still has a very unfriendly, harsh climate. It's even worse for those unfamiliar with this kind of climate and terrain. With a fresh inland sea, though, the area all around it would have been more than welcoming as a way through and a place to stay, which means the Stormlands were the second part of Westeros the First Men reached. And it was the first major settlement of the First Men, making it the place where the conflicts with both the children of the forest and the giants began. Rainwood was part of a humongous wood stretching from Cape Wrath to Cape Kraken, and sadly the only parts remaining of this forest are the Rainwood and the Kingswood. Durran was the first to claim part of that forest and up until that point belonged to the children only. He didn't have the best relationship with them, I imagine, so helping him with a castle that apparently the gods wanted to destroy, is very unlikely if you ask me. The gods who gave birth to Elenei were the gods of the wind and sea. It is said that the sigh of the wind and the rustle of leaves are the old gods speaking to their worshippers, and that the old gods are everywhere around them in forests, waters, stone, etc. The old gods and Elenei's parents sound quite similar, at least to me. If we look at the map, we can see that before the sea level rise, Tarth was part of mainland Westeros and formed a bay, and in the middle of this bay is Storm's End. The place is ideal for building a castle. It has a bay for protection, and even in the story, it was after Durran's wedding that the gods started to send storms. So before, the weather as well as the waves and wind were for sure milder in this area, because it was protected by the bay. The wrath of the gods was the Hammer of the Waters. We see that the First Men considered magical people kids of the gods or blessed by the gods very often. So I think that Elenei was most likely just a magical person. I talked about it in the Helper Maiden archetype analysis. Almost every male figure we have in myths and in the current timeline is portrayed with a magical woman by their side. Elenei saved Durran, the Woods Witch who was sleeping with Herdon and Harlon was prolonging their life. The Night King had the Corpse Queen, Stannis had Mel, Aemond had Alice, Aegon had Visenya, Bloodstone had the Tiger Woman, Claret's had the Witch Wife. I think you get the concept. Since it is pointed out specifically that Elenei saved Durran and protected him, she was for sure magical. But was she just a wood witch? I don't think so. And the reason I don't think so is that in the myth we are given a very specific and weird piece of information. She gave her maidenhead to him, dooming herself to a mortal lifespan. We have stories with wood witches as wives all over Westeros. Why would Elenei no longer have longevity? We are missing something here. And I think that what we are missing is the fact that Elenei was a child of the forest. The children of the forest were able to do magic, and not just skin change. It is never specified what kind of magic exactly, But even though the Maesters say it is not the case, every legend we have about them suggests that they were magic wielders in general. If Elenei was a singer, then there would be some reasonable explanations about some things in the legend. First one, her parents would be magical. They are called the children of the forest by humans. The forest and nature around them were considered their parents. And Elenei's parents are nature gods in the songs. And they were associated with the wind and the sea because this was the form in which the consequences came. We do not have a description of her, but Catelyn said that he had to be returned to the sea, and in the Histories and Lore is depicted as a mermaid at first and with legs after. I'm gonna say there wasn't a switcheroo and she had legs from the start, but for some reason she was connected to the sea. The children of the forest, we know for a fact, were skin changing into sea animals too, and we have one named Scales, so it could be something like that, a child living close to the sea, skin changing into sea animals, or with scaly skin. The second thing is the bit about her giving away her immortality because she sucked Durran. The children of the forest aren't immortal, yes, but we know they live longer, much longer, and we do not know how much exactly. Although there were never many of them, even before the first men. The gods gave us long lives, but not great numbers, is what Liv said to Bran. Now we have for sure one other hero that married a singer, and we are given a very specific line. He counted giants and merlings amongst him his friends, and wed a woman of the children of the forest, though she died giving birth to his son. That sheds a little bit of light, I think. Indeed, by having sex with Durran, she is kinda giving her longevity away. There is a good chance she would become pregnant, and considering the mortality rate of births back then, the size difference, and of course the fact that we are reading Martin, the possibility she would die during childbirth is higher than normal. Godsgrief was the first human that claimed part of the Rainwood, which was part of the huge forest covering a large part of Westeros. His son, though, returned the forest to the children, and he was also called the Devout, meaning he was a follower of the old gods and sympathetic towards the children. So maybe his mother was indeed a child of the forest. It makes the whole story more logical, in my mind at least. Durran marrying a singer and claiming Rainwood for humans easily could lead to serious conflicts with the children of the forest, and lead to the Hammer of the Waters. The children woke the old gods, and the sea rose, drowning and shattering the earth. Stormlands, being so close to the Arm of Dorne, obviously suffered quite a lot. As I said, Darth disconnecting from the mainland can lead to extreme climate change in the area, as well as winds, waves, etc. Durran, by marrying Elenei and claiming the wood, caused war and in the end the Hammer of the Waters, something that won him the name Godsgrief, since the old gods were against him. We know that after the Hammer, the pact happened, and the wisest of both sides were involved. Since Durran's son was both devout and the person who returned Rainwood, he was probably a part of these people. Είναι μια καινούργια μέρα. Σε περίπτωση που ακούγομαι διαφορετικά, αυτός είναι ο λόγος. Ο ήλιος είναι λαμπερός, τα τρυπάνια κελαϊδούν, οι γείτονές μου φωνάζουν. Πού είχαμε μείνει? Στο Storm's End είχαμε μείνει. And that brings me to the castle. Who helped with the building of Storm's End? Bran the Builder was not involved. Even if he was born at the time, which I doubt, he would be a child. As Martin has said, it's myths and legends, and with time every magical and reputed magical construction is credited to him, even if he wasn't involved. Who was though? Because the hall has magical barriers, that's certain. Mel had to be inside the walls to give birth, and couldn't just shed the shadow to kill Renly. It isn't as powerful as the wall, or the magic involved wasn't the exact same, since we do not have ice involved, and dragons could fly just fine at Storm's End, something that isn't possible at the wall. The children of the forest being involved as a whole, again, is not possible in my opinion. As I said before, they didn't have a good relationship with him, and there was an agreement between humans and the children when his son came into power and Storm's End was already built. But the barriers are very reminiscent of the cave over the wall where the children live. If Elenei was one of the children of the forest, then she could be the one to help Durran. We often dismiss it, but their gods were the gods of the forest, stream, and stone. In the Winds of Winter Arianne chapter we are told that in the caves at the Stormlands, there were faces on the stone in the underground caves the children used to live. And all at once she found herself in another cavern, 5 times as big as the last one, surrounded by a forest of stone columns. Daemon Sand moved to her side and raised his torch. Look how the stone's been shaped, he said. Those columns and the wall there, see them? Faces, said Arianne, so many sad eyes, staring. Stone is a barrier of magic. It can preserve the magic on the inside or blocks magic from the outside, as we have seen. For example, Dany's eggs had turned to stone for years, but at the right time, they hatched. And let's not start with the crypts, the Ironborn saying, bless him with stone, the fused stone, the oily stone, the grayscale, because all these are whole ass videos of their own. In any case, stones for sure can be enchanted with magic to offer protection, because this is what stone is. A strong inert barrier that can be used for countless things. The use of stone and rock has had a huge impact on humanity and is an integral piece of Earth's history. It makes sense to have the magical equivalent in ASoIaF. It protects and is a tool for both mundane and magical uses. So I think the Storm's End was charmed by Elenei to protect Durran herself and their family by both natural and magical attacks. I don't know whether it works against every kind of magic, but I'm guessing scrying the inside of the castle while outside isn't possible if the magic is similar to Bran's cave, since Mel couldn't see Bloodraven. The Shadow Baby couldn't pass, and we do not know where else. I'm guessing why it cannot pass, but I'm not sure we will find that out. It could also be more durable against Dragonfire too. Normal stone is already quite hard to melt. I mean, Harrenhal was burned, but there is still stone. It's not like the whole castle's vanished. Maybe Storm's End is even stronger. This is a myth, and even though I love just rambling about myths and trying to guess the real stories behind them, does this affect the current storyline? Yes and no. I think it's part of a pattern that foreshadows future events. We have a pattern that we see all over the books. An ancient fort with a disputed builder that is considered magical, or is indeed magical, is seized, and in most of these, Stannis is involved. I think these events foreshadow the situation at the Wall. Let's start with the siege of Storm's End during Robert's Rebellion, because we have more than one. We have the very grey Stannis the Manis inside the castle trying to keep it for his Storm King brother, and the very green Richmond trying to take the castle for the dragons. In this siege, the biggest problem, as with many sieges, was the food. They were cut off completely. Mace was outside of the walls, and the Red Wines closed Shipbreaker Bay to all trade. The people inside went full on Mesology, minus the wedding party. They ate horses, dogs, cats, rats, and they almost started to eat their dead. Some people tried to open up and surrender, something that didn't sit well with Stannis, and he prepared to have them hurled at the Tyrells via catapult, which is so metal. But Maester Crescent convinced him to imprison the men, since the garrison might need to eat the dead if their food ran out, which is even more metal. What the fuck, Crescent? Enter Davos. My boy sneaked into Storm's End with salted fish and onions, allowing the garrison to survive a bit longer until Ned broke the siege. The second siege we have is the one in 299 AC, and we have again the very prominent green-antlered Renly, and on the outside we have the grey and now fiery Azor Ahai figure Stannis. They agreed on a battle set to start at dawn the next day, but before the battle starts, while being armored by Brienne, Renly is killed by the Shadow Baby. The person sneaking into the castle is once more Davos, but this time is to help Stannis, who is outside. A year later, we have another siege at Storm's End, where Mace is outside while the castle is loyal to Stannis, who is at the wall. The situation started similarly to the siege during the rebellion. Mace and Paxter tried to cut off their supplies. That didn't go anywhere, since Mance lifted the siege and went back to King's Landing because of Marjorie's arrest by the Faith. He left a talking force under Mathis Rovan, but I doubt it matters at that point. The Golden Company is in the Stormlands. Jon Con planned to attack Storm's End in the name of Aegon, and the small council later heard reports of Jon marching towards the castle. In the Arianne chapter from the Winds of Winter, we have Haldon said to her that they took it, and that Mance's army is marching from King's Landing, and a battle is to take place. On one hand, we have the crown, so on paper, Tommen, who is a fake stag, since he's not a Baratheon. And on the other side, we have Aegon, who I still stand by the belief is most likely fake, and I think these events here give even more credence to this idea, since it's even more ironic if both the sides are fake. We also have Jon Connington, the hand that is turning grey because of grayscale. Watching all the previous sieges, I'm betting that Grief will win and take the castle, because the grey and / or the Azor Ahai figure, when a siege is happening, is on the winning side. The men of Stannis were too few to keep Storm's End against the Golden Company, so we will discard them here. We have the rich men, green all around, on one side, and the literally turning grey Jon on the other. Another siege where Stannis was involved is Pike's during Balon's Rebellion. Stannis' win over Victarion allowed Robert's forces to cross the straits and reach the Iron Islands. Stannis subdued Great Wick, the forested island controlled by the Fuck-Around and Triplets Goodbrothers. And lastly, there was the Siege of Pike, where Robert had on his side the very cold grey Ned Stark and Thoros, who was first through the breach wielding a sword coated in wildfire. There is clearly a pattern here. Even though this battle is in favor of Robert, who is a Garth the Green character, he had on his side, and succeeded because of them, 2 grey broody second sons and a priest of R'hllor with a flaming sword. Stannis and Sigils follow a very specific path. Even though Stannis is not the magical Azor Ahai Mel claims, he still is a character that gives us many hints. Stannis lost his footing south, but at this point, does it really matter? The others are definitely the most important thing right now. They are in a sort of siege at the wall, since the others are on the other side, and they need to stay inside until they find a way to win, while they fight each other and lose resources day by day, like in the siege during Robert's Rebellion. During wars, and especially sieges, the worst of people comes out. They already killed Jon and refuse to understand that this only makes things worse. In all the sieges we have seen in all these allegedly magical keeps, the side that won lost and sacrificed a lot. They will do stuff because they will be desperate, knowingly or unknowingly. Stannis in the first siege of Storm's End was starving. Many of his people died from starvation. They were considering eating the dead. Some tried to surrender without considering that this might lead to a worse fate because they were desperate. And in the second siege of Storm's End, he killed his brother. And it's kind of a sad story arc because the first siege he did it for Robert. He was trying to protect Renly and no one really thanked him or acknowledged him. And after his first brother died, he killed his younger one. But the most important thing is definitely the fact that none of these sieges was an one-person job. Stannis held Storm's End so Ned could break the last of the Crown's power. Stannis, without Davos, wouldn't have been able to hold the siege for much longer, and Ned and all of Robert's cause would have a different outcome. Same in Bellon's Rebellion. If Stannis hadn't crushed Victarion, it wouldn't have been as easy for the army to pass and crush the rebellion. Ned's help was also crucial, and Thoros was of Myr. But the madman had a flaming sword, so the most Azor Ahai picture ever. People should not underestimate others and help each other. The real Azor Ahai are the friends we made along the way. The last thing that is heavily hinted in all this event is the fact that in the end, the people who helped the most, cared the most, and sacrificed the most were often outcasts. People that many considered cold, cruel, bastards, and unlikable who did cruel things because they had to, again, with or without knowing it. Even in the siege at Dragonstone, Loras Tyrell, the Knight of Flowers, beat the Bastard of Nightsong, but at what cost? Sadly, in a war, the winner isn't that much of a winner, and all sides commit crimes. This is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed watching it. If you did, press a like, comment your thoughts, and whatever else you want to talk about, and tune in for the next one. It's gonna be about how the siege of Storm's End during Robert's Rebellion and the one in Dragonstone give us a lot of clues for the Battle of Ice and make some predictions. Until then, bye!